Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance, and this is
E in the place to be.
And today we're going to talk about essential gear for videography.
Yes. Should we remind people, since this is only the second episode, what this show is actually about?
Yeah, so why don't you tell us what it's about, E?
It's about me, basically. no, it's about sports videography. We're both professional sports videographers. And we talk about the industry, our jobs, how to get in, what to do, how to do it. And specifically today, what equipment you should be using while doing it.
There's a lot of choices, right? But I guess let's start with cameras and lenses. So what setup are you currently using right now, E, when you go and shoot sports?
My main camera, I'm a Sony person, and not because I'm that type of guy that's like, oh, I'm only this or I'm only that and everything else is crap. Like, this is so not me. But I used to be Canon, actually, and then there was a flood in my office. I lost everything, and then I started from scratch and decided to go with Sony, which we can go into later, the reasons why. But I have a Sony FX3 as my main camera, which I'm very happy with. I think ideally I would love to have internal NDs in my camera and not have to deal with that. But other than that, this is the ideal camera for me. And then I have a Sony FX30, which is basically the same thing, but with a crop sensor. So that's my second camera. So in case something happens to the main one, or if I need a second, second angle, which these days is mostly just to film behind the scenes stuff, while I'm working and I'm using the behind the scene content for my YouTube channel. But these are my two sort of go-tos. I have a little ZV-10 that I bought to do a review years ago, and then just keep just in case. But that's about it.
All right. So I'm currently shooting on A7 IV. I did have an A7 III for a while. That camera was a killer. I love that camera. Fortunately, something happened to it. I don't have it anymore, so now I have an A7 IV. Reason I have the A7 IV is for hybrid. It's the pixels on it for shooting photos are great, 33 megapixel, compared to the FX3 or the A7S III, which is only 12 megapixel. There are some drawbacks, but I use them to my advantage. So when I'm filming hockey, if I do 4K 60, it's a crop sensor. So I'll use a 2875 Tamron that I have, and it enhances it. So it gets me a little closer to the action. So I don't mind the crop on that, and I'm usually shooting at like either a wide open at f2.8, or I'll shoot at f4. I also have two GoPros that I use quite often. I actually use them for a lot of like crowd shots or unique stuff. Like I'll stick it behind the net for goalie angles, or I'll stick it in the penalty box. Sometimes I get some penalty box shots, or I'll reverse it to the crowd behind the penalty box. And basically, those are just my safe ones. Sometimes I'll even clip it behind the bench to get reactions when they score goals. So what I try and do is like, when you're shooting something by yourself,
so what do you use?
I try
like
and give
a
myself
clamp
as many
or
angles.
A suction cup, or like how does it?
Yeah, it's a little suction cup that sticks to the glass. I bought a small rig one. I'm a really big fan of all the small rig products. Like I got a cage and everything I buy, I always make sure it's small rig. Handles, all small rig. And I also have a DJI Mini 3 Pro drone that I use, but I use it more for like establishing shots. I've flown it over a couple arenas and a couple of rinks, but it's scary. It's scary flying that indoors because there's no GPS. You always got a big crowd. There's always someone watching you, and you try some interesting shots, but you come close to that scoreboard sometimes, or close to some obstacles, or even actually one time I clipped a wire in the air that I didn't see, and my drone was okay after, but it was pretty scary. So that's what I got going on right now in my camera bag. But I also use a broadcast camera for all the Habs games, right?
Yeah.
So that's a Sony broadcast camera, and we have a Canon lens with that.
Okay. And with the A7 IV, like, do you have any overheating issues with it? Because there's no fan in it.
One time I did, but I was in an extremely, extremely hot room. The only issue, the camera does get hot, but in the settings, I turn off the put the heat to max, but you have to have your viewfinder opened. Like what happened when we were filming, E and I were filming the other day.
Yeah.
He was testing a camera and overheated because the viewfinder was closed. But except for
Yeah.
that, no, I filmed like 4K 60 for like 3 hours straight, and I've had no heating issues at all.
Okay.
I do get the warning.
That was okay, but never shuts down.
Never shuts down.
That was my main reason. Well, no, there's other reasons, but with the FX cameras, it's like, yeah, there's a fan in there, so I can shoot 4K 120 and never have to worry about, because I've been testing the A6700 lately, and overheating's definitely been a challenge. It's been interesting, so I just feel like you're always sort of, every time there's a break, you're turning off the camera, and then even then, like I went to film the other day, and it was like, during the fourth quarter, it was basically camera would turn off, then I turn it back. The good thing is that when you turn it back on, it actually keeps going, but it's like you turn it off, then it shuts off, and then you turn it back on, then film for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, then it dies again, and then you turn it back on, and then dies again a minute later, and it's like that back and forth until there's maybe like a timeout when you can turn it off and just allow it a bit more time to cool off. But like, it's just, man, it's a lot to deal with.
Unneeded stress. That's what that is.
Exactly. Stress. Well, especially that you're doing this. Usually, like for me, it's like at basketball, for example, and it happens always towards the end. So it's like it's the fourth quarter. That's when you want to be filming the baskets. That's when it matters, and so that's the last time that you want to be dealing with that stuff. So yeah, I'm very comfortable with my FX cameras, mostly for that reason.
But you said you were filming at 4K 120, right?
Yeah.
You always film at 120? Like I find sometimes 120 is an overkill. Like 60, I can get away with it. Slowing it down to 40% for me, I like it. But 120, it's extra creamy, I find. But do you feel like you need that 120?
Well, need is probably a strong word, but yeah, I just get used to it. I think once I started doing it, and then you have that flexibility of being able to go that slow, and then it's all about the speed ramping. Really, it's like trying to make those, quick to slow sort of transitions like as cool as possible. So obviously, being able to go as slow as like 20% speed, just makes it a bit more, punchy. And so yeah, once you get used to having that option, it's hard to go back. But at the same time, when I do film at 4K 60, the last game I filmed was with the A6700, so I did film at 4K 60 the entire time, and it's fine. Like you can definitely do some very creative like speed ramping, but yeah, because I have the option, I'd say 95% of the time when I'm filming a sporting event, like an actual game, I'm at 4K 120. But yeah, sometimes it does. If I use it like mostly, because sometimes I end up, not slowing down much, and it's all at full speed, and 120 at full speed sometimes can look a bit like jittery, and it's not like as smooth and as crisp as it would be if I filmed it at 24 frames or 60. So sometimes I sort of regret my choice, but yeah.
So I've been doing the opposite. Lately, I've been filming a lot in just 24 frame. Because with reels and that and highlights, I find my videos have been fast, like fast pace. You want a quick cuts, quick that. So I've been shooting at 24 for that. Now, I don't really, yes, you can slow it down in post, and it's not as good as if I added more frames to it. But honestly, the files are a bit lighter, and I like it. It's what it is, And I don't always do it. Don't get me wrong. Like if I need like warm up shots or nice shots of close ups of guys, I'm shooting in slow mo for sure, or a higher frame rate. But for game action lately, I've been shooting at 24, and honestly, online, I've been seeing a lot of guys have been doing that. You ever do that, or no? Never ever.
Not really, to be honest. I can't remember the last time I filmed sport action at 24 frames per second. It's been a while. I probably last time was probably 25 frames a second when I was still in
Oh,
Australia. So because it's in PAL over there, but yeah, no, it's been a long time. Obviously, if I'm shooting like an interview or something like a sit down thing, like I'm definitely going to be shooting at 24. But yeah, but you're right though. I should probably go because for me, I think when I'm filming, especially these days, because I'm doing all this YouTube stuff, a lot of my content is repurposed. So maybe I'm shooting for one reason, but then in a few weeks or maybe in a few years, like I'll reuse that for something else. So having that flexibility, that's the same reason why I shoot in S-Log 3. Like it's not necessarily because I want to be, getting like the maximum dynamic range and doing all this color grade in post. Like no one loves to do color grade. Like I should like filming in S-Cinetone would be much easier, but since I don't know, maybe I'll end up mixing this footage with footage with from somewhere else in a future YouTube video, having the flexibility of having the frame rate, the playing it at the speed that I want and grading it the way that I want, sort of helps me with that. So, and also even when I was working with clients, honestly, because like a lot of the clients that I used to have in Australia, for example, like I used to do like all the videos for the Australian soccer team, and it's once every 3 months or whatever. So you're using a lot of older content and things in hype reels, but in other types of videos. So like there's not that many games, so you're reusing content from the same games over and over, and so yeah, having that flexibility to be able to use it sometimes in full speed, sometimes in slow mo, just being able to use it in all these different ways is really helpful. So
well,
so yeah, for me,
I
it's
think that's a
always
good
been about
plan
that.
for longevity of your stuff, like you were
Yeah,
saying. Because
because
honestly, if I
it's
have a fast project to turn around, like, or I'm doing
mm,
highlights for my son or whoever, if I don't have a little bit fast, if I have a fast turnaround, then I'll shoot in Cinetone, and yeah, I'll shoot the
yeah,
sports highlights in 24. But for you, who's repurposing it later on, or for people who are trying to build a portfolio, then that's a great example of what you said. Like, if you have
yeah,
the time, film an S log and get the extra frames, you might as well, right? But I mean, if it's
yeah.
something that's going to be fast and it's going to live once, then hey, why not? Why not save yourself the time?
Yeah, no, exactly. And actually, I've done it like a couple of times where if I'm just filming and then giving the raw sort of content to the client, depending on who the client is, like if they don't really know like grading and all that stuff, I'm just gonna give them like S-Cinetone stuff, and I'm just gonna probably film at 60 frames because that way I can export it at 60 frames. Because exporting at 120,
Oh,
first of all,
it's
well, actually, I either give them the raw files, but like ideally, like what happens with these types of clients is I just put like a reel of all the best sort of content and just send them that. So 60 frames is much better because like a 120, like you can't really create a 120 sequence in Premiere or any other. Like you can, but there's a bit of a workaround and stuff, and yeah, and it creates huge files, and then it's a bit
yeah,
complicated.
that's it.
But yeah, so definitely for short turnarounds or like specific projects that you're filming for one thing and it's just going to be that, then yeah, I would simplify. Well, that's what's great about these cameras, like whether it's the A7 IV or the FX3, like you've got picture profiles that have a lot of dynamic range that can be either like in camera, and even when you're filming in S-Log 3, like you can actually import a LUT and embed that LUT in camera. So like I don't do it, but like with my S-Log 3 footage, if I wanted, like that conversion LUT that I use in post, like I could just embed it on my footage in camera, so that when I ingest the footage in my Premiere software, like it's already back to like a Rec 709 look. I don't do it, but yeah, there's ways to really like speed up process.
Only on the cinema line, like mine on the A7 IV, I only have gamma assist, unless I
Oh
use
yeah,
like a
that's right.
ninja.
Yeah,
So, but it is a good option to
yeah,
have that, right? Like, just to
yeah.
see what
True.
your footage looks like.
Yeah,
Now,
no, true.
now that everyone kind of knows we're both Sony guys, right? The only, honestly, Canon, I never really used many Canon cameras, but I do
Boo.
like their colors. I do like their color
Yeah,
science,
yeah.
and I think
Oh,
that's the only reason why people
Canon's.
do like Canon. It's the color.
Yeah, well,
Sony's
people are
getting
like,
there, but they're not there yet.
because like Sony is like the new sort of cool kid in town. Like people don't realize, like, I don't know, I want to say maybe 5, 6 years ago, like Sony wasn't even near what they are today. Like it's just because even like the this A7 III was probably their first sort of camera that really caught people's attention in terms of, like, you know, being bought like in huge numbers, and everybody had one and stuff like before that. And even the A7
And it's
III,
almost
like the
5 years old, that
colors are a
camera.
bit, yeah. And the colors are a bit sort of, there's a lot of like, you know, you can easily, like the reds, I think, are the main issue with that camera. Like it turns like magenta really quickly, and it's you know, there's a bit of work. Like, and if you're gonna film in S-Log, then there's definitely a lot of work involved. Like where Canon, you know, if you go back to like the cameras that they had 5 years ago when that camera came out, like you would film in C-Log and you would just have like a little conversion lot and everything would look great. Like you said, the colors are like, they're spot on. And obviously in terms of like photography and lenses and all that stuff, like Canon's been in that world for way longer than Sony. And but it's just that Canon, for me personally, like I love Canon cameras, but it's just that when they started introducing the RF lenses, um, and it's at that time that I had the flood in my office and had to buy new cameras. And it's like I was gonna buy a new camera anyway because my cameras at the time didn't do 4K or anything like that, so it's time for a change. But it was like, if normally you kind of stick with one or the other because you already have all the batteries, you have all the lenses, so it makes sense to just buy a camera that's going to fit all that and not have to restart everything. But at that point, it was like, if I buy a new Canon camera, now these RF cameras, they have different batteries and they have different lenses. So really going with Canon there was no advantage going with Canon over Sony. And I was like, at least with Sony, first of all, there's like, you know,
Sony's
I don't know how many
ecosystem
lenses.
stays the same. The
Yeah,
battery stays the
exactly.
same. The
There's
lenses,
this,
the E-mount.
and there's hundreds of lenses. And if the Sony lenses are too expensive, there's Tamarins, there's Sigmas, there's all these other brands, there's third party brands that make an E-mount like lens. Where with the RF, the Canon EF was the same way, but with RF, they're not selling that license to anyone. So the Canon's the only one doing it. So first of all, there's not that many lenses. Well, now there's a few more, but back then there wasn't that many to choose from. They were super expensive. And it's like, well, you know, I want to create a new kit. Now I'm going to have to buy all these super expensive lenses. And I know you can use a converter and just use EF lenses, but like, what's the point at that level of quality? Like if you're going to buy those like fancy cameras, you want to maximize their potential and not sort of ruin it with converters and stuff. So I was like, at least with Sony, you know, I can buy the camera. I can buy, like, there's a lot of options at different price points for lenses, and that's their main. When I met with a Sony rep, like she was saying herself, like that's their main thing. Every time they have a meeting, it's all they talk about, the one mount that fits everything. And then at least like as a kid, you're buying a lens, it's worth like investing a little bit more money because that lens is going to last you forever. It's going to fit every other camera that you buy after that. And lenses don't lose quality. Like it's not like well, obviously there's better ones that come out, you know, in the future, but like a lens is always going to be a good lens. It's not like it's going to lose anything over time. So yeah, for me, Sony, it was mostly a budget thing, but Sony made a lot of sense, and they also, like, their cameras and their lenses are much better than what they used to be.
For me in broadcast, I've always had a Sony camera, but we've
Mm.
always had Canon lenses. All the lenses are Canon, but the cameras
Do
are
you know
all
why?
Sony. I have no idea why, but it really helped. Like when I've used many Sony cameras, like from, I don't know, FX6, FS5, FS7,
Uh,
all that. Yes, the only thing is the Sony menus are not fun. The menus
yeah,
are I mean, they're not user friendly. They're getting better now with the newer versions, but
yeah. The
even
last
like look
one's
at
all
your
right. The last one's all right. I like the fact
yeah,
that at
but
the
like from
start
the
there's like a
FX3,
summary and
the FX3 and the A6700, the newer ones, to even mine, the A7S3 or the A7 IV, they're different menus already because people
oh,
have
okay.
been complaining about those menus.
Hmm.
Um, but I do like, I find Sony is very, very reliable. Not that
Yeah.
Canon isn't. It's just for me, I've just always trusted it, and it's always been great cameras. Even like look at you and I used to use EX1s, EX3s. I never had any problems with those cameras at all, at
Yeah.
all, at all. They were workhorses, and I think that's what Sony does have going for them.
No.
Maybe it's because of that broadcast background, but definitely Canon always has had the advantage in lenses.
No.
So speaking of lenses, what's your go-to lens?
Depends what I'm filming. I
Obviously,
think, yeah, if I'm outdoors, like, where I'll probably need a lot of range, I'm almost always on my 70 to 200 Sony G Master f2.8. That's the Mark II as well. So it's as far as I'm concerned, the best sort of the sharpest and most reliable sort of sports videography and photography lens. But if I'm filming indoors, then it's a bit more it's a bit harder because yeah, it's if you're filming basketball, it's way too tight. You need something a bit wider. So I tend to go with my Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8. So it's very sharp as well. It's much heavier though, so it can be annoying. And there's no stabilization in that one. So these are my two sort of main ones. I have a few other ones, but and also the other thing I like in the Sony G Master is the fact that I don't know what's it called. You know, I like the autofocus. You can have like you can block out like a 3 meter to infinity, like something like that. Like it's either like gonna focus on anything or it's gonna start from 3 meter onwards. So when you're filming sports, if you're filming like something
you pick
behind
the
a
focal
net.
length.
Yeah, well, that thing is like it's not gonna. You know, sometimes you're filming behind a net, or you're filming like at hockey, you're filming behind the glass. Like sometimes they'll focus on the glass or on the net, and you're gonna lose a lot of. Or if you're filming like MMA, like you're trying to film through the cage or boxing, like the ropes, and like by turning that switch on, it's never gonna focus on these things. So it's always like super clean on the action, and yeah, that saves you a lot of trouble. But yeah, those are my two main ones. But when I started though my Sony kit and I didn't have that much money, I was definitely into the Tamron Trinity that most people have used, which is like a Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8, and then the 28 to 75 and the 70 to 180, if I'm not mistaken. So well, the first one, the 17 to 28, was more for like establishing shots. But the other two, yeah, I use a lot for indoors. One for indoors, one for outdoors. And I still have my 28 to 75, actually. I sold the other one, but the 70 to 180. But yeah, that's pretty much me. What about you?
So actually, it's funny because I have the Tamron family that you just mentioned. But my 28 to 75 is the newer version, the G2. And I had the G1 also. The G2 is a lot sharper.
Yeah, I heard.
It focuses a lot
stabilized,
faster
isn't
too.
it? Is it stabilized?
No, none of them are. I mean, there's a bit. I mean, the cameras are getting better, right? The lenses, you're not going to have stabilization in a lens unless you're paying top dollar for it.
Yeah.
Like not everybody has a G Master like you. The G Master line is great though. Like I've used a lot of those lenses when working with other people and that. I definitely think the Sony lenses are really, really great, but affordability to have on your own, they're a lot. When your lens is double the price of your camera sometimes, you know, so I'd rather go with the Tamron family. For broadcast, like I said, I use a Canon. It's like a 7 millimeter to 190 millimeter, but it's a 25 zoom and it's full servo. But that lens for my broadcast camera, that lens alone is like 5 pounds.
Yeah,
it's a big heavy lens. Even like you said, the Tamron, your Tamron 35 to 150.
150.
That's a heavy lens.
Yeah,
compared to 2875, like it's probably a good pound and a half heavier than that lens. At least it feels like it, because your camera is kind of like top heavy after, I find, if you don't have the V-mount battery and all that on it.
Oh yeah, it is by far the heaviest lens I've ever filmed with.
Yeah,
for sure.
But the advantage I find too of having the Tamron family is they're all the same thread for filters and that. Yeah. And I know you're supposed to get a a ring, and you're supposed to get a bigger
Yeah,
filter
step
for
up
all your
rings and
lenses.
stuff. Yeah.
But me personally, I don't like the look of it, and it's nice having a filter that's meant for that camera.
Yeah. Well, the other problem with step up rings is that you've got the filter screwed into the step up ring, and then the step up ring screwed into the lens. So when you're trying to separate all these things, like sometimes, yeah, they get stuck together, and it's annoying, and you need to grab it from the inside or something. So if you're at home, putting your stuff away, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're at a game and you're trying to do this quickly and not touch the actual glass so that you don't have to clean it afterward and all that stuff, yeah, it gets messy and annoying.
Polar Pro just came out with new filters that have built-in magnetic step-up rings, the hex, and they just snap right on. Now they look great, but they all come in the biggest size, but coming in the biggest size comes with the biggest price.
Yeah,
So there's
of
pros
course.
and cons, but the speed for it, I think the speed is worth it. I think that's what makes it. If you're really running and gunning and you need to slap on that ND filter fast,
Yeah.
it's a really, really good option. It's just they're pricey at over $300 a lens.
But like when you're talking about like the G Master being expensive, like it definitely is. But well, for me, it was like, because it was at the time where I was about to move from Australia to here. So obviously I'm trying to get rid of a lot of stuff. And also I'm like, I don't want to be carrying a tripod anymore. So at games, I mean, like, I just don't want, don't want to film like I'm handheld all day, every day. So I figured if I buy a lens that has stabilization in it, that way I can probably get away, because I've got stabilization in my camera as well. I can probably get away with never using a tripod ever again, unless I'm filming like an interview or something. So that was sort of my reasoning. Plus, so basically I don't need to buy a tripod, or a good one. I've got like a small shitty one, but not a great one. I can sell my Tamron 70 to 180. So if you take these things into consideration, then yeah, that
It was a good
means
investment
that
then
the
for
other,
you.
yeah, so yeah, the money sort of, it offsets a bit of the costs, and then it's worth it because it makes my life way easier.
Okay, so speaking of stabilization, what stabilizer equipment do you have, or would you bring to a shoot,
Well,
or you
if
try not
people
to
are
bring
watching
anything?
this in 16:9, you can see um, a gimbal behind me, but I'm not a gimbal guy at all. Not that I don't like him, but again, I just don't have the patience. Just like the tripod, I don't like carrying a lot of stuff. I just want to be like, walking around, doing my thing, filming when I don't want to be setting up and having like tons of stuff in my backpack and having a case and all that, especially when you're filming in places where you don't know really where you're going. Like, well, I have like a dedicated access to like a dedicated like photographer and videographer room where I can leave like my expensive stuff. And so when you don't know these things, like I don't like to bring like a lot of stuff. So yeah, for stabilization, I use what's in my camera and my lens really. Like I do have a gimbal, but I use it only for like specific shoots. Like for example, if we're doing like a media day, then I'll definitely use a gimbal to make my shots a lot more creative, a lot more dynamic. Um, Other than that, yeah, establishing shots maybe, but like if I'm going to a game, honestly, I probably should, but I'm not gonna bring my gimbal just to do like 4 or 5 establishing shots. Like, but that's just me, freelancing and doing mostly shoots for myself. Like if I was working for a client or if I was working with a team, then I probably will have my second camera on a gimbal so that I can shoot, do all my things like normally. But then when I need a gimbal shot, I would just grab the other one that's already on it, do my gimbal thing, and then just put it back and keep going with my main camera. That would be how I'd do it. But
So I
it's
am
just not part of my
guilty
job.
of what you said. I I have the Ronin RS3.
No.
I bring it everywhere I go. I regret bringing it everywhere I go because it's just another piece of equipment that sits in your bag. So then I find myself trying to make myself use it. I'm like, you know what? I need this nice entrance shot, or I need this nice shot. So basically, I'll set up that shot. But ideally, you want your second camera on that, so you can just put it down, grab it as you need, and have another camera ready to do handheld. I'm very
Yeah.
big on handheld too. it is hard with the stabilization. I wish like these cameras had a little bit more stabilization. When I do the broadcast stuff, it's all handheld I do, and it's so stable. My camera, it's so stable. My lens, but it comes at a premium price. The lens of my camera is $45,000.
But you could rig your mirrorless camera and with like a shoulder mount thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, you could. Uh, I never tried it because we had an FS7 for a while, and that was
Mm.
kind of the setup. And it was the most uncomfortable camera I ever used. Even the FS7 is uncomfortable. Like when you're kind of wedged in and you're too high.
Yeah.
So I felt like those cameras never really worked. Like even honestly, even the FX6,
Yeah.
it's big. Like you're holding it out here, and it's like it doesn't feel the same. Like our little
Yeah.
Sony cameras, A7 IV, FX3. I find they're really really good. I mean, yeah, you kind of bring it close to your body, and you're a little compressed, and you're making sure you're turning your body, not your arms.
Mhm.
But I find that I feel more stable with that than I would with a bigger camera. Now my
And the
shoulder camera,
FX6 doesn't have stabilization actually, so
no, it doesn't. It has
that's the drawback.
ND
Yeah.
filters, but it doesn't have stabilization.
Yeah, that was my main thing. Like I was like, when I bought the FX3, I was debating between those two. Obviously, FX6 is much more expensive, so that was also an argument. But yeah, one had ND filters, the other one had stabilization. And I was like, which one is more important to me? And I went with stabilization, probably because my camera beforehand didn't have any stabilization and had ND filters. So I took the ND filters for granted. And I was really looking forward to getting some stabilization. So I was like,
Yeah.
nah, I'm going with the FX3.
Actually, the
But
worst camera I ever used for stabilization was Red. I used a
okay, I've
Red
never used a
camera.
red camera.
I used a Red camera for this Scooby Doo documentary. We were filming in 8K,
Yoinks.
and we're working on the final edit, and they realized like, oh, we don't have a shot of the outside of the building, and we needed a couple B-roll shots. So I ran outside fast to go and get this establishing shot. I had to bring this massive tripod. I had to bring all this gear because I tried to do it handheld. First of
Yeah.
all, the camera was so awkward, and the footage was so shaky and so crappy that I was like, you know what, we're doing it on a tripod. I'm doing this properly. But I thought I could just run out fast, get the one shot I need, the establishing shot of the door and the building. Forget it. It was awful. It was awful. It looked like there was an earthquake. Like, first of all, with the cinema lenses, it didn't help. There's zero stabilization in them.
Yeah.
I
It
mean,
was the same thing for me. Like when you're that's what annoyed me about not having stabilization in cameras. That sometimes you just want to do like a quick establishing shot, and it looks all right when you're filming it, but then when you're looking at it on your computer, you always see that little jitter, that little shake. It's not big, but it's there, and it's an establishing shot of a building. Like there shouldn't be any, unless you're gonna do like a smooth movement. Like there shouldn't be any, and it's like yeah, it just annoyed me. And so to be able now to do these shots without a tripod is just saving so much time.
that's where the gimbal comes in handy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you want the gimbal for. But the issue I have with my gimbal, and I don't know if you have this issue, it doesn't always do what I want when I want it to do it. Like, you're
Yeah.
moving and you're trying to do this. You're like, okay, I want the shot to come in, and I'm gonna pan left, and then you're going, and it starts moving on its own a bit, and I find I'm fighting with it sometimes. It's not as smooth
Yeah.
as they make it sound.
Yeah, no, definitely. And honestly, for me, it's like if all I want to do is like a slow sort of, movement from left to right or a slow push in, I'm just gonna do it in post. Like
Yeah,
it's gonna be exactly what I need it to be. It's gonna look exactly the same. It's like why would I bother? Yeah, it's just
but
easier.
when you show up with your gimbal, you look pro. It's like
Yeah,
having a
yeah,
matte box on our Sonys.
yeah.
There's no point.
Exactly.
But everybody soups them up because when you get that high paying client and they see that matte box,
Yeah,
they think it's worth it.
yeah,
So,
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. But and then there's situations where yeah, if you're uh, I don't want to say overcharging, but like if you're charging a lot of money, like you need to look the part because otherwise the clients get a bit insecure, especially if you're like a small team and or you're by yourself and they're like, what are we paying for exactly? So, but if you have like big gear and everything looks like impressive and very, cinematographic, then they're all like, they feel secure, they feel safe and they're happy with what's going on. But I'm sort of the other way most of the time. Like I'm filming either behind the scenes or I'm I'm around like athletes. I'm around the field, things like that. So I don't want to get people too worried, especially if they don't know who I am. So like a small camera, people don't really pay you much attention. Where if you have a big kit, then like, sorry, who are you filming for? Why are you here? Like, can I see your credentials? All that stuff. So it's like, yeah, I'd rather sort of just be a fly on the wall with my little camera and do my thing and not be bothered by anyone. What camera would you like if you were starting now
Yeah.
and you were hoping to like maybe eventually do maybe not work for the Canadians but do a little like paid work, like little jobs here and there for either for teams or for players and stuff, like what would you say would be the ideal camera or camera kit to start with?
Budget wise, obviously it all comes down to your budget, but I think the FX30 is a great camera. Yes, it's a crop sensor. You can use full frame lenses on it, but I think just the fact that you can do 4K 120, 4K 60, no overheating issues. You don't even have to buy a cage. You can plug a handle in it. You can also get the top handle that comes with it too for XLR mics. I think it's a really, really great option for sports. But nowadays, even it's going to sound crazy, but if I didn't have the money to start off the camera and I want to start filming, iPhone 15 Pro,
Yeah.
I would use that to start.
Yeah, it's
And
surprisingly
most
good.
people have it in their pocket.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of it. So like I help out my son's team and I'll do highlights and that. And I don't always bring my camera gear with me. And in his season edits and stuff like that, I'll throw in a couple iPhone shots.
Yeah.
No one knows the difference. Now,
Yeah.
I don't film the whole video in iPhone, but I definitely think it's a good starting point and it's a cheap starting point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's it's obviously there's limitations to what you can do with iPhone footage, but yeah, there's sometimes, especially if you're not, because the thing is like you can't zoom. So like if you're trying to zoom in like on phone footage, it's gonna, the quality is gonna go down like very quickly. But as long as you keep like the lenses to the focal length that they're meant to be at, like there's 2 or 3, but even like if you go to the longer ones, the telephoto ones, like already right there, like that one has less quality than the others. But yeah, if you stick to the prime sort of specs of the phone, you can actually get some good content. So if you can get close to the action, that can definitely do the trick. If you're at the top of the stands filming and hoping to do like a great hype reel, that's another story. But
Yeah, you're too far. You have to be close to the
yeah.
action. But you know what's crazy about the iPhones is the stabilization in them.
Yeah.
Like even GoPro, like action cameras. Why can't they put some of that action camera technology in our SLRs? Because like my GoPro is so stable, like it's impressive.
Yeah,
like, it really impressive.
But it's a much smaller sensor, though. I'm guessing. I'm not like a gearhead, but I'm guessing that the bigger the sensor, the bigger everything else around it has to be, and then
exactly.
becomes
It's like when you have a zoom lens and you're zoomed in. Every shake is multiplied, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what would you start? Yeah. What do you recommend starting with?
Well, I've always on my YouTube channel, like with my go-to every time someone would ask me, like, what's the budget sort of camera for starting an up-and-coming sports videographer, my response was always the Sony ZV-E10, because I thought
it's a great
like
camera.
And it's I think now it's like $600, well, US, but and yeah, it does. You can do like 1080. 120p. Yeah, it does everything you need it to be. It's not obviously not going to look as great as my FX3, but definitely good enough in the right conditions. If you expose properly, you can. I used it a few times as my second camera, and people wouldn't have noticed the difference, because I used it in a way that was maximizing its strength and not putting it in the situation where it would look bad. But yeah, that's usually my go-to. But yeah, if you got a little bit more money, then the FX30 is definitely is definitely better, like, because you can shoot in 10-bit, you have like dual native ISO, you got stabilization, you've got all these things that are making a big difference. But yeah, it is more money, and it is a steeper learning curve to learn how all these things work. Because that's the other thing, is like it's one thing to buy an FX30, but if you don't know how to, if you don't want to, because that's a lot of people to think that the solution is the equipment, and that just by having better equipment, they're automatically going to get better footage. But to get the better footage with the better camera, you need to learn how to expose properly. You need to learn how to color correct. You need to, and there's more work that comes with a better camera as well. It's not like, with other things in life, like usually the more money you spend, the less work you have to do. But with a camera, it's pretty much the other way around. Like the better camera means more work as a videographer, because you need to shoot in manual mode really to sort of make the most of all these features. And then you need to either color grade or do something in post. Like, it's rarely just straight out of camera, everything's perfect. So it depends on how much work you're willing to put in, and where you want to go with this. Like, if you just want something auto that's just easy to handle, user friendly sort of thing, then yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're better to stick with like a ZV-10 or A6400 and just sort of have fun with it, than to spend more money into something that you're not really gonna make the most of all the extra stuff.
The thing that I find makes the biggest difference too is lighting. And
Yeah,
with the cheaper cameras, it's light sensitivity, It's like,
yeah,
how soon are you getting that grain in your shot that kind of makes it not look so good,
mm,
So that's why you're paying the bigger bucks for the full sensor, right? But
true.
honestly, lighting is key. Like, I mean, I've filmed with good cameras in shitty lighting conditions, and it looked not very good. So lighting is key. Lighting is key, and even in your edits, like, right, lighting and
Yeah,
audio, they make up so much of the images. It's not even funny. Like, it's not just about the
yeah,
camera; it's about everything else that goes with it.
yeah. And I love using audio to tell a story, and to add more sort of, make my videos look more action packed with a good sound effects, or just the audio that I actually recorded.
What audio equipment are you using now?
On my camera, I use a shotgun mic, an XLR shotgun mic, because that's the other thing as well that I like about the FX3, is that there's XLR inputs. So I use the Deity S Mic 2S, I think is the actual model name. Yeah, I like it because it's very good quality, especially for like run and gun stuff, and it's also very short. So, because a lot of those shotgun mics, like at that level of quality, they tend to be like quite longer. Like the Rode ones, they're probably double the length, maybe not double, but almost. And so if you add like a dead cat on top of that, sometimes if you're filming wide, like you can actually see the tip of your shotgun mic in the shot. So that's annoying, obviously. So having a shorter one, like, just guarantees that that's never going to happen. So I like it for that as well, and it's easier it's easier as well when I'm vlogging. I can just sort of turn the camera around and shoot myself with a wide lens, and it's all good. But yeah, I'm definitely into XLR shotgun microphones. I also have like a DJI mic wireless kit. I really like that as well if I'm doing like interviews, or if I'm miking someone, stuff like that. I love the fact that there's an internal recording as well, because the drawback with whether it's the DJI or the Rode, like, they're cheaper, so it's not like professional wireless kits. So if someone's far away and there's people like in between us, or if they turn their back to you, sometimes you lose the connection a bit. So having that internal recording that you can always go back to, just in case, that's definitely a lifesaver. And also having the safe track, like, you can record to a certain level that you think is right, but just to make sure, you can double up into another track that's recorded like 6 dBs lower. So that's always also very helpful in sports, because when they talk at a certain level, but when they celebrate or when they
Oh, it's a
scream
different
at
level.
someone
Yeah.
else, it's definitely much higher. So having the safe track is very helpful for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. How about you?
So, like you, I have the same DJI kit I use for a lot of interviews. I usually hook it up with a lapel. On
Mm,
my camera, I have a Rode Video 2 mic. It's a small one.
Mm.
I got it because it's compact, and I like that it's self powered. You plug it into the audio jack on the camera, and you don't have to worry about batteries.
Yeah, I think I have it actually. I just never use it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. But actually, nowadays all the craze is about 32-bit audio. So
Yeah.
are you on that? Have you tried any of these new DJI mics or the new Rode system that has 32-bit float? Because that would
Yeah.
solve all the problems of how you just said when you have a player mic'd up and they're celebrating. Now, have you tried any of that? Have looked into any of that? Is something you're thinking of getting?
I haven't, no, but yeah, it is like you said. I think that the purpose of that is that you can basically push up the audio in post as much as you want, and or lower it, and it won't clip, like it won't like lose, you won't bring in more noise by pushing up, or like you can, if it's clipping, you can actually turn it down and you'll lose the clipping. Like it there's an enormous amount of like dynamic range in the audio that's recorded. So obviously very helpful for mic up videos. But no, I haven't tried it, to be honest. I think I tried it once, but I'm trying to remember, because I remember I don't think I think someone sent me footage that was recorded with that. But yeah, it is really helpful. If but I've heard, because that's in the newest version of the
DJI and the Rode wireless too.
yeah.
Wireless, yeah.
But I heard there was stories of people having like connection issues, and like a little like a background noise or something while they're using the DJI with certain cameras and things like that. And I heard it was sort of the same thing with these new versions of it. But I don't
Yeah, I
know,
heard
because
that
there was
there are
stories
frequency
about,
issues, right?
yeah, something like that. And
But I
they'd
mean,
be
having
like, yeah,
that
this,
flexibility to not clip, that's a game changer. Like
yeah,
not to worry, because I'm constantly monitoring my audio levels. Like I'm lowering them down
mm,
on the camera also all the time, checking, making sure everything's good. You do your sound check with somebody, and all of a sudden they go off, and you're like, oh no, did that clip? Like it would be
uh,
nice to get rid of that little headache, you know?
yeah. Well, the way I'm set up, like with my shotgun mic, even if I'm not using the DJI with the safe track, um, because the XLR inputs, I can record whatever I'm recording in channel one, because there's two inputs. I can double up in channel two. So what I usually do is like one, I do that, and then one channel I have it like set manually to what I think is right, and then on the other channel I'll leave it on auto, so that way when someone is screaming, it'll probably prevent it from clipping on the audio track,
Yeah,
on the auto track. Um, so yeah, I sort of have a fail safe that way. But then you have to remember every time you use your audio in post to just use one of the tracks, and not just assume that one and two are just like left and right, because they're going to sound different. And normally I try to use always the one that I set manually, because the audio, what happens is that when everything, every time it's a bit lower, it pushes it up, so there's more like background noise and
yeah.
things like that. So I only use it like if I absolutely have to. But yeah, it's
I
sort of a fail safe.
love the fact that they come with backup channels, because it saved me in one interview. I had an issue with the actual receiver itself froze during the interview, but you're in mid conversation. You know what it's like. Sometimes you have a guy for 5 minutes, so you can't even really say anything. So I just went off the internal recording after. Now
Yeah,
I knew it was still recording. Well, I was praying it was still recording,
yeah, exactly.
and I was okay with it. But now,
Yeah.
even have you ever just clipped that DJI mic onto somebody and use that for an interview fast when you're kind of running around talking to players?
Not really. For an interview, I usually, like when I've done interviews with players in the last few years, it was always off a shotgun microphone that would be like attached on a stand, and just, on top. Usually at a media day, just because at a media day, it's just so much easier to have that shotgun microphone, there, and they just take their mark and ready to go, and not have to, mic each player one after the other, like, oh, can you go under the jersey, and oh, let me help you, and all that sort of stuff. Like if you can avoid that and just have the shotgun always at the same spot, it's just so much easier. So for interviews, I haven't done it. I use my wireless mic more for like mic'd up videos, like miking up like a player. I'll have like those like vests that you wear underneath. Like now these days, like players always, it looks like a sports bra, and usually it's to wear like a GPS tracker so that they can tell like the speeds that you're going to and all that sort of stuff. But I use it basically. I replace in that little pocket where you would put the GPS tracker. I put my DJI mic, and then I pass a lapel sort of to the front. I clip that to the front, and yeah, they go that way, which is great because the pocket's always at the back, and so that way it's people think that it's actually not a good thing that it's going to break, but like there's a reason why the GPS pocket is at the back.
Yeah,
it's
getting hit
that's
less there.
Exactly. Even when you fall on your back, it's, the spine is arched. So it's the middle of the back that takes the impact, and the top of the back rarely gets hit at all. So that's where the microphone is. So the chances of it breaking, there's always a chance, obviously, but they're very slim. But the lapel microphone that I use, though, I definitely use a cheap one just in case, because even in basketball, there's one that broke, I think, just from contact from guys boxing out and stuff. So and also there's a lot of sweat that goes in there, so you don't want it to but yeah, no, that's more mic'd up videos are mostly what I do with my lapels and wireless kits.
So I had to I usually do the same thing. I'm doing that a sit down interview. I'll try and have a boom mic over the head if I can, because that's just the easiest, especially when you have 2 or 3 people to interview in the same spot. They're walking in, walking out. You just give it a quick sound check. You're good to go. I was in a situation where I had to go on the ice one day for interviews with Hockey Canada. It was U18 National Championships, and it was like, hey, run on the ice. They're handing out the trophy, grab the top players, grab the coaches, and go. Now, I'm with somebody who's asking the questions, but you don't really have a microphone. Well, Rode has one now where you can actually pass it to people and kind of do the traditional interview style. So what I did is I took the DJI mic and I just clipped it on their jersey. But no one wants to see that DJI logo, right? So I asked Hockey Canada, I got a sticker, and I stuck that Hockey Canada sticker on it. So it just looked like they had a maple leaf. And they already had their medal on. So I would clip it to the medal, and it would look like it was a Hockey Canada logo on their medal. Smart. And it worked out good. And no one even from Hockey Canada knew that I had done that. I only told them after. I'm like, no, that's the microphone. Because they're like, oh, what's that Hockey Canada logo? I'm like, that's the microphone. But it worked out great in that situation. But honestly, I got lucky that we just thought of it like that. Like I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm just going to clip it on, because you don't have time to help people up when you're running and gunning,
Yeah, and even like, well, for that with players, like especially like you said, when you're running around, it's not ideal. But the DJI comes with like this little, it's like a magnet thing, so you could potentially put the microphone inside and just have the magnet sort of showing, which is like super small. It'd just be like a little black thing, and I've done that a couple times actually. When
Did you do that on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, exactly. Did I mention I have a YouTube channel?
Yes, you have. All right, next on the agenda. For interviews, since we're talking about interviews, what do you do for lighting? Ideally, if you can control the situation, you will. But maybe let's talk about how you control the situation and when you can't control the situation.
If I can control, I'll have a key light, which for me is like a Godox UL 150. There's one right there. Yeah, so they're good because I like them because there's no fan, so they don't make any extra noise, and they're really bright as well. So that's going to be my key light. Otherwise, those little red and blue lights behind me, obviously you can do like daylight. You can do all these different settings. So they're cool because they're battery powered, so you can bring a few of those, and they're magnetic as well, so you can put them easily like somewhere to help you with a bit of light if you need to. But if you're gonna do, and also they're great, obviously, if you're doing like media day, hype reel content, and you want to add colors like I have in the background, but
or they die like mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say like we do, but I looked at your shot. I was like, I don't think you have any at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. All right.
See, that's why you need Godox. Reach out to me. I'm a big fan.
I have Nanlite, and they're pretty good. But I guess maybe I had the power up a little too high, so it didn't last the whole hour.
Yeah, Mine's on like 5%.
Oh, okay.
Which is what's good about these things. Like, yeah, 5%, and it looks like this. So imagine at 100. But but yeah, otherwise, if I don't have control on the light, first of all, that's why I like a camera with good dynamic range like the FX3, because it allows you to manage these things a bit better. But I try to just use the daylight to my advantage. So if we're outside, first of all, it's like positioning yourself in a way that you're going to make the most of. You don't want the sun to, first of all, be in the subject's eyes while they're talking, and the whole time they're squinting, they're doing this. That's not great. But also, you don't want a too harsh of a light. So if you do have like something like there's these things you can buy like for $20 on Amazon. They're like reflectors, but like it's like a 5-in-1. So it can be a reflector, but it also can be just that white sort of see-through, um, texture thing, so that you use it as a basically to sort of, it's like an ND filter for the sun, really, and it just gives a softer sort of look on your subject. So you can do that if
So
you're
you're
if you're
using it as a
outdoors.
bounce, basically,
Well, I
or
would
to block
either,
it.
because sometimes, like, if let's say someone's sitting in like stands or something, and there's a bit of we're in the shade basically, so that they're not dying in the sun while giving this interview, then I'll definitely use the reflector as a bounce so that the person is not directly in the sun, but then the sun is bouncing off this and going to their face, and then you don't need any lights, you're good to go. But if I'm actually in the sun, I'll use it more as a diffuser. That's the word I was
Okay.
looking for. So like basically I'll have the sun sort of coming towards them, but then the diffuser is up, either held by someone or by a C stand if you have one, and yeah, just diffuses the light and makes it much much, because otherwise it's very harsh on the face, and you get those raccoon eyes as well, where like the shade from your so yeah, it doesn't look great. But if we're indoors, it's just trying to face a window, and having that light in front and not behind you, and making the most of the room, and finding a way that, yeah, you can use the daylight from the windows to your advantage. But if you don't need the light from the windows, if you have your own lights, then it's the other way around, trying to get rid of the windows altogether and just control the light so that it stays the exact same. Because the problem with the light coming from a window is that you never know when a cloud's going to come by and then just change your lighting, and it's going to go up and down, and yeah, that's a problem. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
What about
So
you?
for me, if I'm doing an interview, I'm doing a 3-point lighting setup: key light, fill light, backlight. I always have my key light basically like at a 45, and my camera is closest to the key light, and I have the subject looking at me, which is a little off cam. For outside, I always try and make sure that the sun is behind me. Have my subject placed like at 45, and the same thing, I'll use a bounce, something to make it a little softer, the light, and definitely you need an ND filter. But I try to find like a shaded area, which so everyone's more comfortable. Um, but like honestly, shooting outside is difficult, especially like they're in the middle of a sentence and a big cloud comes over, and you're like, oh man, the whole dynamic just changed. So I do try to avoid shooting outside if I can, and I really like controlling the light itself. For my lights, I have like a Godox SL60W, but I've been testing the Zhiyang, I call it, Molus 100. The light, actually, I have it right here. It's on me right now. It's the size of an iPhone. It's great for your camera bag. It has a grip battery. The battery is so. It only lasts about 40 minutes. But plugged in, it's great. And it's 100 watt. So I'm slowly upgrading all those to all those lights just because of the size, because it's easy to travel with. Like the Godex one is good, but I don't like the fact that like right now you can't hear it, but there's a little fan. So when you're doing interviews, I got to mess around with the sound a little bit more, where this other light is silent. So that's what I use. But lighting is key. Like lighting makes your videos so much better, but it's hard. It's tricky. Like you gotta work on lighting and really have the time to master it. And I think that's the thing that took me the longest.
Well, since you're a hockey guy, because the most difficult part with hockey is the fact that there's so much light, sort of like the ice looks so bright, often in comparison to the players, which who will look much darker. So, like, how do you expose properly? Because often your camera will give you all these will tell you that you're overexposed because the ice is like super white, but at the same time the players don't really look that bright. So how do you know when you're exposing properly?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. So it's like when you're setting your white balance, you got to make sure you're on. And actually, I always underexpose a little bit, just because I rather be a little underexposed than overexposed.
Hmm.
Especially because a lot of rinks aren't evenly lit. Like I'm talking amateur rinks. NHL rinks
Yeah,
are pretty good. I mean, at the Bell Center, we've added so many lights. It's very very even now, but
yeah.
it's bright, man. It's brighter than being outside at noon. You know, it's bright in there. But like, so if I'm going to my local rink here to film, I'll underexpose by maybe one stop, just to be safe. Now, some people might say no, but if you're filming in 10-bit S log, you're okay. You're
Yeah.
you're
Oh
you're
yeah,
fine.
that's the key. Yeah.
That's the
To me
key.
it's
You can
like
push
I'll
it.
try to like the ice, like I try to see if I'm losing any details because that's the white is white, so it's hard to
Yeah,
tell like am I too white or like, but if you can tell that like, oh, I can't see that there's a puddle of snow there in real life, but then in my camera it's just everything is white and I can't actually see the difference in the texture of the snow, then I'm definitely overexposed, right? So
exactly.
it's
I'd
yeah.
rather be underexposed than overexposed, especially with white background, with white ice.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
because you don't
that's
want it to be all washed out. Like you want to see those details, the texture in the ice and stuff like that. But
exactly. And make sure it has to be a manual mode. You can't have any of the settings change. You set an auto,
yeah.
like even on my camera, I have a setting where I can go into my automatic white balance and I'll lock it
Hmm.
fast for quick reference from running and gunning. But in the rink, no, you have to make sure you just lock that white balance in manual mode. Make sure you get the right white balance, and then keep it. Make sure it stays the same, because if it changes, all your footage is you're color correcting for days.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know.
No, definitely.
So is that all the gear we've gone through? E, is there anything else that we're forgetting?
I don't know. We're pretty better wrap
Oh,
things up because I think we've been
I got
going for
one. What
almost an
camera
hour.
bag are you using? Which
Uh, um, I don't know actually. I don't know the brand. Um, it's right there. This bad boy. Is there a name? I don't even know how to pronounce this. Wenderd. WANDRD.
and what? It's 25 liter, 35 liter.
Not sure. I'm not very good with like. Don't ask me how big my house is. I have no idea. But no, it's good. I like it because there's pockets. There's a sort of a harder shell in the middle where you would put like the camera and stuff. There's pockets specifically for lenses, and you can open from the top or from the bottom if you want to go pick up something in that shell. Like you don't have to open the whole thing. So no, it's really good for that. And there's a laptop sort of pocket as well. It's perfect for my needs. But I also have like a what's the name of that case that I have that's very popular? Like it's a Canadian thing, I think. Is it Nanook or something like that?
Nanook, yeah, the hard. You have the hard case.
Yeah. Whoa, jeez. Yeah, I've got one. I got that too. I mostly got that when I was moving from Australia to put like my lenses and stuff. But if I do go somewhere where I know that I'll have access to like a photographer room or something, I'll definitely bring it and just put all my stuff in it. So yeah, these are my two sort of go tos. But like I said, like I like to travel light. I hate like bringing stuff that I'm not gonna use, and I'm like that like in my everyday life. Like for me, my biggest pet peeve is like carrying something in my pockets all day that I'm never actually gonna use. Like I've got like my house key and my car key. I don't have a wallet. I don't have like anything. Like that's me. So I sort of tend to be that way with everything.
So
What
I'm
about
not
you?
like you. I have the 35 liter Peter McKinnon bag, and when he saw it, he thought I was moving out of my house because
Yeah.
it's big, but everything fits in there. I honestly, it's one of my favorite purchases. Now, I will say I did not pay full price for it, thank God, because it is pricey.
Ooh.
But quality wise, I love it. It's great. Like I've had some other Manfrotto bags, or
Hmm.
I had this Vanguard bag for a while that was pretty decent. But honestly, my Nomadic Peter McKinnon 35-liter bag, everything fits in there. I can bring all my gear, well, whatever I really, really need. I'm constantly
Hmm.
taking stuff in and taking stuff out. Uh, but I love it. Honestly, it's a great, great bag. And I really feel like once you have a solid bag and you trust it, putting your, like, you trust your gear in it, it's nice. It's a nice feeling. So I'm very, very happy with that bag. Is it for everybody? No, just because of the price. But I think if it
Hmm.
was cheaper, more people would definitely, definitely have it.
Well, I think for me, like, because I often like my camera kit is just already together as I leave my house. Like, I don't want to put everything sort of like my camera, my lens, all that sort of stuff in the bag, and then having to show up to the shoot and then put everything together. There's an audio handle to connect, all that sort of stuff. So, and the V mount and all these things. So I just do that at home and just have my camera actually has a seat in my car with this seat belt on and everything, and it just yeah, that's how that's how
I
I
got a
move
question for you.
around.
Do you have the camera sacks? Have you seen that? It's this
No,
sack
yeah,
that people wear. That's what you need. You put that in your car, and that's your camera's seat.
yeah,
I would be
true.
interested to try
Well,
that though. I think that would be pretty good for stabilization of the sacks. It
yeah,
looks.
no, I know a couple of people who use them. They're pretty good, yeah, for that reason. You can still have that handheld sort of look and feel of like, you can have those smooth movements and stuff, but the camera is rested on something, so there's none of that jitter of the hands getting tired or anything like that. So it's the perfect sort of, you know, halfway between handheld and gimbal. Like the bigger, so the next step, more like documentary style version of that is the Easy Rig, where you have that sort of thing that's like it's almost like shoulder pads, and there's this
Oh
stick
yeah,
that's
I
over
never
you with
used
like
that.
a
Have you
cord,
ever
and the
used it?
camera's attached to it. I've never used it myself. I've been on several shoots where people were using it, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's like if you're gonna, if it's more for like documentary sort of, shooters. Like if you're gonna be running and gunning, but you want to always sort of be all those movement to be smooth and not have any sort of harsh sort of shakes or jitters and things like that. It's great, but I don't know.
I've never
You
seen
look
anyone
like a
use it
robot basically.
with a small Sony camera though. I've only seen it with like FX6s and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, usually, yeah. If you're gonna put
Yeah.
that much money in stabilization, you've put more money in your camera beforehand.
Do you remember? E and I used to work with a guy, Gilles, who was with Steadicam.
Oh, yeah.
Remember his setup? Like he had it was
The
a serious
Yeah, well,
rig,
back in
man.
those days.
He had a
Yeah, well, Easy
broadcast
Rig
camera.
is like the newer, sort of more,
Yeah,
like user friendly version of what Steadicams used to be. Yeah,
man, he had weights on him. He had everything. He was dead at the end of the day, but
yeah,
pulled off some beautiful shots. But the Steadicam system back then, that was next level. Like no one has that
yeah.
anymore.
Well, I don't know if they still. Well, I think they still do. Like in Australia, the all the sports that would go like rugby, that just it just goes up and down all the time. Um, the Steadicam version that they would have would be like those segways, those
Yeah,
things that so the guy's on the Segway with the camera, and he's just sort of rocking. He's always going this way or that way, and he's on the Segway thing, and it's like. And he obviously knows what he's doing, so he's never falling. But it's one of those things where there's like probably 3 guys in Australia that can do that. So these guys are making shitloads of money because they're just, there's only them. It's not like there's a school showing you how to film in a Segway.
did you ever see the clip of the Segway that runs over Usain Bolt?
Yeah. It's exactly that. Yeah,
That's I always think of that when I think of a Segway. The fastest guy in the
yeah, but
world got run over by a Segway.
yeah. Well, at least with them, like with the sports, it's soccer, it's rugby. Like, there's never going to be a player sort of. Well, I guess soccer they could, but like the chances of a player sort of running out and hitting you are much lower than American football for some reason, for example. But yeah, no, I've never seen actually the guy fall or get hit or hitting someone. But
No, I've just seen that one clip. A poor Usain Bolt in the wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
should
about
we
it
do the
for.
Q&A?
Yeah, sure. That's about it for
Oh,
equipment. So
Q&A.
now we'll go to Q&A, and hopefully we covered everything. If there's anything that you guys want to know, just write in the comments below on one of our platforms, and hopefully we can answer your questions. All right, let's start with the Q&A.
Yes. So one question that we did get. Well, let's start with this. When filming football, do you film handheld or do you use a tripod? And if you do film handheld, how do you hold your camera to prevent shaky footage? I think I touched on that already. Like, I don't use a tripod, and my way to prevent that is by spending a lot of money in stabilization. But yeah, no, I do. There's stabilization in my camera, there's stabilization in my lens, so obviously that's a big step up. But I did do a video recently that explains exactly how I shoot handheld without shaking. It's all about the way you position yourself, like having your elbows tucked in next to your body, being, not super wide with your legs, but wide enough so that basically all your camera movements are done with your body, with your hips, and you don't want to be lifting your feet. You don't want to be moving your hands. You just want to be moving your body. And yeah, that's pretty much how I film every sport, including football. What about you?
So for me, if I'm filming football, I'm going to use a monopod.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a monopod with a fluid head. Only because ideally I want to be on the sidelines for highlight shots, right? So I try and hang out with I'm talking, by the way, American football.
Yeah.
Not okay. So I want to hang out with the guys who do the sticks if I can, for like I'm not, if I can, I'm on the sidelines, you're by the guy with the sticks. I'm not always using that monopod, but I definitely will use it sometimes. And if I'm not using it, I'll just put it all the way up and I'll have it as an extra handle.
I was gonna say, have you ever used a hi-hat? Like I see a lot of people, especially at football, these old tripods that are like super low. It's like a fluid head, like all the everything that you would have on a normal tripod, but it's like this much off the try to be in
off the ground,
probably like this much off the ground, so you get those sort of
so you could do that with your monopod, because your monopod, the one I have, it goes like I think a foot and a half. It's a Manfrotto one.
Okay.
And you have like the claw feet on the bottom, right? So it's very stable, and you have a fluid head. And honestly, I'll loosen the head where I can just not even use the handle. I just use the grip of the camera and I'll move it like that. Yeah. And I used to use it for hockey sometimes, but I found, depending where I am in the corner, when I'm getting the guy coming down the boards, I didn't like it because I needed more of a freedom. I needed more freedom. But football, I find because you have more space, the guy's running towards you a lot of the times, as long as you don't get hit, right? Because when you're on the sidelines, there's chances of getting hit. But no, I use a monopod if I can. Yeah. All right, next
question. Do you know any good events or ways to network and get jobs in the industry?
So you can volunteer, which is not always easy, but you can volunteer. And like we said last episode too, minor sports. How about a minor sports team? Like, so where we are in Montreal, I do hockey. I would go to a Quebec major junior team or a midget AAA team, or even like we're talking about football, I would find a CJEP and I'd donate some time, do some reels for them, show them some highlights, because it's becoming more and more in demand. So once people know you, they'll call you again, especially if they like your stuff, and you can get more jobs. Because a lot of this is word of mouth, honestly. And you got to show them your work. Somehow you got to get in front of them. So by maybe volunteering, doing 1 or 2 games, it helps your demo. It helps you meet people. It gives you good practice. That's the advice I would give. What about you?
Oh, I agree. And I don't know if that person meant, by event, like actual networking events, but I think for sports videographers, a networking event is a game, really. It's just showing up to games where, like you said, lower levels, whatever you can get access to, show your talents and make connections and tag all these people in your highlight and your IG reels and all that sort of stuff. That's how you network, especially these days. Social media is the way to do it, but also like meeting people and actually like introducing yourself and having conversations with all these people, whether it's coaches or other videographers. Like someone will refer you, someone will hire you, someone will recommend you. Like that's how it works. And the next question is sort of similar. Like, do you think that sport videography is a saturated market, or is there room for a beginner? Like for me, there's no such thing as a saturated. Well, there is, but I mean, like every market's saturated. Like it's it's just a matter of like being good at what you do and doing like what we just described. Like it's not like it's never going to be a point where you say like, nah, stop trying. It's not worth it. Like it's always worth it. There's always a way.
Yeah. And especially nowadays with all the social media platforms, people want highlights. And you know what? We might have the same goal or same home run, whatever, but you could have a different angle. I could have a different angle. My edit's different than yours. It's all about creativity and showing what someone else's take on the same thing. Like if you and I had the same footage and we edited a piece, it would be completely different. Music choices, everything is different. So no, it's not. Yes, there's competition. I believe there's competition, but oversaturated, no. I don't believe it's oversaturated. It's not easy to get in, but it's like anything nowadays. You got to work hard and you got to show that you're worthy to be in that club or be worthy to get a chance from that pro team. But oversaturated, no, not at all.
Yeah, my mentality is always like you got to show them. Like you got to offer them value. Like I just see so many kids coming in with the, I've filmed for a year or so, whatever. Like now I want to make money from it. Like why won't everybody give me like an opportunity? But it's like no one's gonna hire you to help you. They're gonna hire you to help themselves. So you got to give them a reason that whether it's like coming in for free for the first time just to show them your skills, or bringing them value that they're not getting from their current videographer, like looking at their content on their social media accounts. You can see what they're producing, show them what you're doing and how it's better than what they're doing, and I'll guarantee you they'll be interested. But if you're offering them the exact same thing that they're already doing, but you want to charge them money for it, it's like why would they do that? So you need to offer something that they're after, like, or it's a different style, a different idea, a different concept, or just simply better. But they need you more than you need them, basically.
Listen, if you want to work in sports, act like an athlete. Okay? But athletes need to try out. Athletes need to get seen by scouts. Athletes need, so put your stuff out there. Show them. That's why even if you volunteered one day, here's the content. Look what I did. Look what I can do. Now, where can I take this? How can I help you solve your problem? It's the same thing. They have to see you in order to give you that job. So just like an athlete, he has to be scouted or have a tryout to be on that team. Same concept.
I am an athlete.
Yeah. All right. So that's all for the questions today?
Yes. For Perfect. Today anyway. But feel free to send more questions our way.
Exactly. All right. So that is it for episode 2. Hopefully we covered enough gear for you guys. And like we said, if you had any questions, please add below in the social platforms. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye. Take care.